Jesus said, "Man cannot live on bread alone, but from every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." You're listening to Daily Truth.
Romans chapter 2 says that the Gentiles were a law unto themselves, that their own consciences, even if they never received a prophet, never received an evangelist or an apostle or a single page of the Torah, not 1 ounce of special revelation, simply by being created in the image of God, although that image has been tarnished by sin, a vestige of the image of God remains in every single human being. And by virtue of them being created in the image of God and having the inward witness of their moral conscience, that's natural law in the correct way of defining natural law, not John Locke, not a libertarian version of natural law, but a biblical version of natural law. Romans 2 is all about natural law. Romans 1 is all about natural revelation. And when you put the two together, what you can ascertain from Romans chapter 2 is that even the Gentiles, if they never receive special revelation, just by virtue of being made in the image of God and having natural revelation, meaning seeing the world that God created, the sun, the moon, the stars, as an evidence of God's existence, his divine power, or eternal power and divine nature. That's what Romans 1 says. So that they're without an excuse. Natural law, made in God's image, written on the hearts of men, with natural revelation, the creation itself, testifying to the existence of the triune God. These two things combined, Romans 1, Romans 2, natural revelation and natural law, makes even a Gentile who doesn't have a single Bible verse and has never heard the name of Jesus, it makes them accountable not merely to commandments number 5 through 10, but commandments number 1 through 10. So that if you're in a deep, dark jungle in South America and you've never heard the gospel and you've never received a page of the Bible, you will be held accountable by God on the final day if you die in unbelief. If God in his sovereignty and providence does not send someone to preach his word to you and accompany the preaching of the word with faith by the Spirit, you will be ultimately condemned on the basis not just of breaking the second table of the law, commandments 5 through 10, love for neighbor, things like murder or theft. You will be judged by God for breaking the first table of the law as well, having other gods before him, idolatry, taking his name in vain, graven images, and profaning the Sabbath. The 10 Commandments is moral law. Moral law is synonymous. This is what I'm saying for the theological nerds. Some of you, it may be going over your head, but some of you are going to really appreciate this. The 10 Commandments is moral law. Moral law is synonymous with natural law. That's the Christian view. Natural law is not something distinct or separate or simply a part of divine law, is what I'm saying. It's not, here's divine law, and we can't hold people in society to that standard, but here's this lesser thing. It's kind of moral, but not as moral as divine law, but less called natural law, and that's what we can legislate. The Bible does not teach that. The Bible teaches that the 10 Commandments, both the first table of the law, how to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the second table of the law, commandments 5 through 10, how to love your neighbor as yourself, that all 10 of these commandments are written on the hearts of men. That's natural law, Romans 2, and exemplified by natural revelation. That's Romans 1. And this is what we should hold as a civil standard, even in our legislation in every nation throughout the world to the end of the age. That's the biblical view. And the civil magistrate, the church must preach that. But even the civil magistrate, as a separate sovereign sphere from the church, should legislate that and enforce that. Now, there's a conversation to be had with a distinction, a very important distinction between sins and crimes. Right? It is a sin to get drunk. But if someone gets drunk in their home, it's not a crime. If someone is publicly intoxicated, it is, because it threatens the public. You are now a public nuisance or a public threat, danger. Likewise, a Christian nation would not be going into people's homes with the coveting police or the thought police or the worship police. You would not be intruding into people's homes to see, are you worshiping Allah here or Jesus? If they're worshiping Allah in the privacy of their home, it is a sin, but it would not be a crime. But there is a very real conversation to be had for a Christian nation allowing for public high places to be raised in pagan worship. Pluralism, let me say this. Secular humanism is pluralism. Pluralism is simply a euphemism for polytheism. Polytheism is advocating for worshiping false gods. If you are a Christian, our goal is to disciple the nations, and that nations would be Christ's inheritance. They are, but that they would act like it. They would live like it. They would legislate like it. We cannot view the public square or the civil government as though it is neutral. And we cannot say, hey, we're just a pluralistic society. That's our worldview. Pluralism. Pluralism is polytheism. It is worshiping many gods, which ultimately it's public atheism. That's what it is. That's what we teach as a nation in our public schools, public atheism. That's the mantra, public atheism. That's when it comes to our public speeches and things like that, right? Wanting to remove "in God we trust," wanting to remove prayer from schools, wanting to remove, why? Because that's not our nation's God anymore. Our nation's God it's polytheism. So you can't give honor to one God and neglect to honor all the other gods. And because there are so many in our polytheistic culture today, it's safest to simply acknowledge no God. Polytheism functionally becomes atheism. And that's the world that we currently live in. So my point is this: when we talk about the law of God, we have to be able to distinguish between the three divisions of the law: moral, civil, and ceremonial. The moral law of God, the 10 Commandments, is natural law. It's written on every heart, and it should be enforced by every nation, with the caveat of a clear distinction between sins and crimes. That's moral law.
Big news. Really big news. Our next Right Response Conference is in the works. We've got a number of things already lined up and organized. This is what we got so far. The whole conference, 3 days long, on postmillennialism and theonomy. And the speakers, Dr. James White, Dr. Joseph Boot, Gary DeMar, and of course yours truly, Pastor Joel Webbon. We've got a great lineup. We've got great topics. If you want to find out dates and location and registration and anything else, go and visit our website, rightresponseconference.com. rightresponseconference.com.